Kia ora, g'day, welcome back. Here with a Q&A. And this question has come through via direct message. And it's a question I've never thought about. So pretty interesting, but I'll read the whole message, and the person has got at the end that they don't mind me using their name. So shout out Dave, thank you. And he's got a little blurb down there. But here's the question. It says, hi Joe, or here's the message with the questions included. Hi Joe, I really enjoy the content on your channel, especially the Q&As. I've got a question that's purely out of curiosity rather than anything else. Does the New Zealand Defence Force, NZDF, and the Australian Defence Force, ADF, keep records from the NZSAS or SASR selection courses? And if so, do you personally have a copy of your own selection records for either unit? I'm also curious, do those records actually show what the units are looking for and how each candidate measured up? I notice that you get asked what the unit is looking for, what types of qualities, traits are they assessing you on when people are going through selection. So I was curious if those records, if you have them, show any of that information. And how did you measure up? Appreciate any insight you can share, mate, and thanks again for the content you put out. Sincerely, Dave. Brackets, I don't mind you using my name. I'm never doing selection. And then he's got a big laughing face and LOL. Man, cool question. Hey, I've some people out there that, you know, my mind has never gone into that space of thinking about or wondering about or requesting that. I have got some of my, when you discharge, you get a whole bunch of information, documents, medical records, all that sort of thing. I actually haven't even really gone through it. I've seen bits and pieces of it. I've seen where my posting was to SASR as an example in Australia. I don't recall if I have got them. I'm sure I've got them somewhere, but I don't recall any of my documentation for the New Zealand Defence Force. But I'm sure I probably got some documentation somewhere. But anyway, interesting where people's minds go. And that's a great thought, actually, in and around do those records from selection show what they're looking for? And how did I measure up? So anyway, does the NZDF and ADF keep records for the selection courses? My understanding is that they do. For how long they keep those, I don't know. Maybe indefinitely, maybe just for a period of time. Maybe they've been transferred over digitally from hard copy paperwork, because those that have watched either the New Zealand or the Australian selection would be aware that there's a lot of notes being taken down about each candidate, and there's meetings that have been had, and they have the pictures up on the board, and they discuss each person, etc. So I would assume that those records are kept, but for how long, I don't know. So that's the first part. And if so, do you personally have a copy of your own selection records for either unit? I can't say that I do have a copy of my own selection records for NZ or Australia. But again, it's not something that I've thought about. And I guess I'll try and give give my response as to why that is for me. One, I was just happy to have passed, and I was happy to have progressed on to the cycle. So I didn't really care what was said in the records or in the notes that may have been, or that no doubt would have been put together by the directing staff and senior instructors and all that sort of thing, because I just took it as clearly I've done just enough or scraped through to be able to get to the next phase, which was the cycle of training. So I, personally didn't really care about it. And I can't say that I have a copy of it. I have done some asking around and spoken to some people that have still got a connection to the unit, and some that are out, and also done a little bit of looking and stuff as well online after getting this question. So thanks, Dave. And I'll come back to that. I'm also curious, do those records actually show what the units are looking for, blah, blah, and how I measured up? So that part, because I don't have a copy of those records or whatever's kept, whether there's a scoring system, whether there's a list of attributes and characteristics of what they're looking for in those documents, I don't have those. I can't answer that with any sort of hand-on heart or authenticity to say, yep, this is what it has, and these are the checklist of things that they're looking for, and this is how I did, or this is how I measured up, because I don't know and I don't have a copy. What I can say, based on what I've seen and had a little bit of a look at, so the New Zealand part, they'll have an archives piece somewhere, personal archives area or section, which will have some information. The ADF will likely have the same thing, and I'm guessing it may be tied into the PM keys. So in Australia, there was a system called a PM keys, or we got a new number, or not a new number. We still had our regimental number, and then I got issued a PM keys number, which I still remember both of those from the ADF time, just as I remember my regimental number that I was issued here in the NZDF. And it may be part of that PM keys system where everything gets stored. But also with regards to my understanding and what I've had a look into after getting this message is that, and it makes a lot of sense, is that those records would be kept classified or kept private for a number of reasons, and there's probably a main one that comes out. One is, I think, and this is just me speaking here, I think to prevent people from trying to game the system with regards to selection itself. How you could game it, I don't know, but there's a whole bunch of other smarter people out there than me who might find a way to try to use that information if it was ever made freely available for people to then try to make themselves out to be this person or this type of person, if that makes sense. At the end of the day, on selection, you just need to be yourself. And I think I've spoken about that on other videos. Yep, they're looking for qualities and traits such as being proactive, being a team player, being able to suffer and put up with, all sorts of things that will happen, being adaptable, being flexible, being able to think on your feet under stress, under pressure, etc., etc. But and other things I've spoken about, be a good human being. But ultimately, you just need to be yourself. And selection will take care of the rest. It will strip away any of the facade, for want of a better term, of the person, and then you'll be left with you and how you respond in those situations when you're sleep deprived, when you've got no food in your belly, when you don't know how long it's going to go for, when you don't know when it's going to finish, when you're losing track of time, when resources are taken off you, when you're put into positions of leadership and you now need to try to lead this team, or you're a team member and you need to pull your weight or do your part or contribute as positively as you can, even though you're hurting just like everybody else. So I think there's and I've received a number of these types of questions, and I've even had one-to-ones with people that have been really, I don't know if fixated is the word, but have had a real strong interest, strong desire, and fair enough, I guess, of wanting to know how can they become this person. That's one that I get hit with a lot. I really want to try to become the person necessary to serve in a Special Forces unit now whilst I'm young. Can you help me? Hopefully what I'm sharing here, and hopefully what I've put out in terms of Q&A responses, hopefully it helps to a degree. But the biggest one that I could share, which I don't know if I've mentioned this in other videos, maybe I have, but the biggest one that I could share, which I've just mentioned now, is to be yourself. You have to be yourself, and the selection will take care of the rest. The psychologists involved, the directing staff involved, your peers and team members involved, if they still do buddy ratings for the candidates themselves in terms of what they're looking for, because you're also on you're on selection with a bunch of people, typically strangers that you don't know, and you're wondering as well. You're observing and you're judging each other. Would I want to serve with this person? Would I want to go to war with that person, etc.? Like it does happen. I know I did it. And during my time, there were times on selection where we were asked to do a buddy rating, and that carried on into the cycle of training, where you're asked to do a buddy rating. Who would you most like to? And I'm assuming, because again, I don't have the records and notes of my own selections, but I'm assuming they'll use that in terms of looking to see if there's any correlation to what the directing staff are seeing and writing and observing and talking about in regards to a candidate, versus what the candidates are seeing and observing, and what that looks and feels like, because you're interacting with those people on your cohort on selection. Hopefully that makes sense. But I think there's an element there which makes sense to me for those units to keep that information private, classified, for want of a better term, secret even, whatever. Whether that's the case or not, for me personally, is neither here nor there. I've never reached out to try to ask for my selection records. Would I love to know what's in them? 100%. And I think I might have even spoken about that on a reaction or one of my reaction videos, either one that I've done previously or one that's coming up, that I'd love to, be able to just see and have a read of what was said. Good, bad, ugly, I don't care. I would love to know from a personal interest perspective. But at the same time, I also really don't care. One, I was progressing, so that's a big part of it. So I'm like, awesome. Like, I've got no issue. I don't, it doesn't bother me. And then two, in Australia, getting through it all, progressing and becoming badged, etc. Like, there's nothing better. And I suppose seeing any comments from a directing staff or from what my journey might have looked like, and based on the perception and observation of the directing staff, I'd probably be interested just for my own curiosity. You raise a good point about is there a checklist of things in that on there, and how did I measure up? Yeah, I'd love to know that stuff, just again from a personal viewpoint, but it's neither here nor there for me. Like, I was fortunate and blessed to be able to A, get on the selection in the first place, B, fortunate to pass it, C, fortunate to progress onto the cycle, and D, I was blessed and fortunate to keep progressing through that to the point whereby I received my beret and got posted to a troop in a squadron. So the rest is sort of history for me. I wouldn't say irrelevant. Like I said, being honest about it, I'd love to know what was said, but at the same time, like, I'm not fussed at all. The fact that I don't know what has been said. So I would say, in response to that first one, there's records kept both in NZ and Australia. I would be sure of that. For how long they're kept, I don't know. Like, my records from my New Zealand selection in 1998 may have evaporated, may have been thrown in a furnace by now, for all I know. And Australia, again, I have no idea if they still have my records, given how long ago that was done. So it would have been in around 2002, I'm guessing. We deployed in 2001, Timor, come back, basically just trained, went on selection, then rolled straight into cycle. So it would have been, and then deployed to Iraq in 2003. So it would have had to have been in 2002 sometime for the Australian one. And that's, well over 20 years ago. So don't know if they still keep the records. Do I have a personal copy? No, I don't. And doesn't bother me. Also curious, do those records actually show what the units are looking for? I don't know. I think possibly it would, maybe, and it'd be interesting to see the full records, seeing the psych evaluations and stuff as well. It would just be really interesting. So again, what a great question. How did I measure up? I think I must have scraped through just enough to be able to earn a spot on the cycle for both NZ and Australia. And I must have scraped through enough, at least in Australia, to earn the opportunity to receive my wing dagger and sandy beret. So I'm grateful, and the rest, there could be a whole bunch of things in there where they're calling me names or stupid or whatever. I got through in the end, and I'm happy with that. So appreciate any insight you can share. I don't know if that's much of an insight, but that's my take based on what little I know, and based on the fact that I haven't sought to try to I hadn't even considered trying to get any records from my NZ selection or Australian selection, or to ask if they have any of that type of information. Like I said, I'm sure they do, but that's just one of those questions that just has never entered my frame of thought. So thanks again, Dave, for your time, for your interest, and and for the questions. Man, really cool questions. Sorry I can't answer them very well for you. And I think for me, going back to what I mentioned about people maybe potentially looking to game the system, I think if I was blessed enough to have those documents, I don't know that I would be running through that on my channel anyway. ultimately, I know selection is one of those things, even though there's documentaries and stuff out there about selection. You've heard a whole bunch of interviews from former UK SF operators, American operators, NZ, Australian. There's a bunch of interviews and stuff out there with people where they're giving their take based on their experience. I don't think any of them, myself included, I don't think any of us would, if we had those records, would go through and read out, okay, this is what they're looking for, and this is what it's measured against, and these are the ways that they're assessing the individual on in terms of how did they display it, did they display these things or not, and here's a whole list of things. I don't think I personally would ever share that, and I don't think anybody from those other units would either. Why? Because, like I said, you've got to be yourself, and you want to try to remove as much as you can of any gamesmanship of the selection. And yep, like my good friend Pup Johnson, Greg Pup Johnson, former SAS operator, shared when we were having our chats and answering questions. What did he say? He goes, I knew about the sand dunes, that didn't help. I knew about the 60 clicker, that didn't help. You know, all these things, it's evidence shows, and it's tried, tested, and proven. You can know what's coming up in selection. And Phil Campion gives a great breakdown of the UK SF selection. There's a great breakdown of the NZ selection and the first among equals. Similarly with the search for warriors. And even then, like, it doesn't matter. You're still you're still up against it. It can be helpful, don't get me wrong. And for those that pass, they were probably going to pass anyway, with or without that information, with or without that documentary, with or without hearing the words from other operators. Bear in mind, back in my time, there was no video interviews of people that had done selection in NZ anyway. Prior to me going on, there was nothing like this to be able to consume and watch and have a listen to what it is that they're talking about. There may have been books and things like that, but I wasn't a reader, and I'm still not a big reader today. But there's definitely a heck of a lot of information now, and even with all that information, doesn't guarantee how people will go. So be yourself, suck it up and suffer, go through the process, and selection will take care of the rest and weeding out the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. So anyway, I've babbled on enough. Great question once again. Was that nearly 20 minutes? Hopefully you get something out of my babblings, in this Q&A. I'll probably, I'll look to post this up as soon as I can. But appreciate your time as always. And Dave, thank you again, just to acknowledge you for the message that you sent through, and anybody else that might have had similar thoughts. But that's my 2 cents for what it's worth. Maybe there are people out there with their records. Maybe there are people that have gone through and read out what it is that they've got from their selection records. I've never seen it. I've never come across it. I've never thought about asking for it. And I personally have got no intention of reaching out and trying to ask for it. Yeah, it is what it is. It's a part of the history. They've got it or they don't have it. And yeah, like there's no, I suppose maybe from a family history perspective, there might be some value in it for children or grandchildren at some point in the future to maybe have a look at. But other than that, it's fine. They've got YouTube that they can use as a record anyway, so they can just run with that. As always, man, just appreciate your time, and the message is the same. Regardless of any challenges, difficulties that you may be going through, just keep turning up. Take one day at a time. Put one foot in front of the other. Keep staying in the fight. Things can do and will get better if you want them to. The sun will shine again. Those better days are closer than you think, and there is a light at the end of that tunnel. No matter how long, lonely, dark, and miserable it may seem right now, I promise you things can, do, and they will get better. So just stick at it. As always, go always a little further. Remember, who dares wins and who cares wins. And until the next video, there's a big mana wave coming from me to you, filled with my aroha, respect, appreciation, and gratitude for you all.